This series of bonus podcast episodes were taken from my 9-hour live stream on the 15th of April 2020. I interviewed 16 speakers back to back whilst on lockdown from the coronavirus pandemic, and I thought I would edit them just for you. Hope you enjoy and stay safe, my friends. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. Ian Farrar. I've been listening with interest. I've been out walking on the fields.
Have you?
And listening since 9 o'clock this morning. You are doing awesome stuff.
Thanks so much, Roy. What a thought. Honestly, the grief I'm getting off you lot, it's been great, Richard. We've had a lot of people watching live. Look at this. A lot of people watching live. Some great comments across the day. I love this, being able to do this, because 16 friends all coming together to put something on today. Some great content already, and I'm looking forward to for your session, because what we're going to talk about is journaling. Am I right?
Indeed we are. Yes, journaling for business success, but it's for successful stuff.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about you first, Richard? Because people might be thinking, okay, he's just going to dive in, talk all about journaling, but you're a rock star in your own right. So tell us all about you, Richard.
Oh, bless you, mate. So I am a massive geek. So my background is that I used to run an IT business in Birmingham, an IT business called a managed service provider that helps other small businesses. So all of the IT businesses across the world are absolute rock stars right now, because IT is what is keeping the world going while we're all stuck at home. Anyway, I sold that business about 9 years ago now. I still work in the IT industry. What I do is teach people, other IT business owners, to avoid the many, many mistakes that I made when I ran my own business. And I think one of the biggest mistakes, if we can sort of link it into the journaling pieces, Ian, after I sold that business, that's a success, isn't it? That's, something good, built the business up and sold it. Yet within 6 months, I was immediately like, right, I've got to get on, got to get on. Did not pause to celebrate that success whatsoever. So what we're going to talk about a little bit here today is just the importance of slowing down, recording, the successes that you have on a day-to-day basis, week to week, month to month, year to year, and celebrating them. Because as entrepreneurs, we're just going and going and going. And I think this situation at the moment it's a reset, isn't it, Ian? We're just going to have to pause and take stock and say, whoa, let's slow down and smell the roses a little bit.
Yeah, I think reset is a word we've used a couple of times this morning. We'll probably use for the rest of the day. And I think it's about habits, isn't it? I mean, what did they say? Does it take 21 days to make a habit? Is that right?
Yeah, that's what they say. I think, yeah, absolutely.
So, what we might find out of this is we might create some habits. I know friends of mine who are starting to exercise more, doing meditation, doing yoga as part of this lockdown. So maybe journaling something that you could now inspire people to do as part of that. So how did you get into journaling, Richard? How did it all come through?
Yeah, well, it was, the story that I mentioned. I think far too often all of us who work in business or work for ourselves or any type of driven individual, we achieve something and then it's instantly forgotten, and we're on to the next goal and the next goal and the next goal. So we never actually take the time to pat ourselves on the back, to give ourselves the credit that we're due. And of course, the other people around us can see this, and they say, oh, well done. But you're like, right, we've got to move on to the next thing. So for me, it was about slowing down and, appreciating what I was doing well. And I think we've all had the days, everybody watching this who works for themselves has had the day where you win a new piece of business in the morning. Awesome. You get a compliment from a client in the afternoon. Awesome. And then just before you're about to turn your email off and finish for the day, you get a nasty little bit of feedback from somebody on Twitter or an email or a client that says, oh, I didn't like that. And what do? We don't focus on the big piece of business. We don't focus on the compliments. We go, oh, yeah, oh God, everything's rubbish, because we get knocked off track by that. So journaling for me is a way of, in the morning and of an evening, reminding myself of highlights, what went well during the day, what went good, and just reminding myself, you're doing good work, keep going, and be proud of what you're achieving.
Yeah. So how do you do it, Richard? How do you journal?
Yeah, sure. So I should say up front, I am an Uber journaler now. So I'm not suggesting that anybody listening to what I'm about to say jump in at the deep end and go absolutely crazy on the journaling front. What I would say is there's a whole industry of journals out there. You can go on Amazon and find thousands of different journals. The one I use, Ian, is called, and if the people at home can see that there, the 5-minute journal. So what the 5-minute journal is, there's a little bit of a book at the start, sort of telling you how to use it and stuff. But it's basically, let me flick to it so we can show what. So if we can see that there. So a typical day, you've got the date at the top. There's a little verse that, to set you up, because I'm a big fan, Ian, of win the morning, win the day. I don't know if you know that phrase. How you start the day. I get up, make my bed, I meditate, crack on and things. And then we've got 3 things that you're grateful for. And that's how you start the day. And then 3 things that I want to achieve that day. And then we've got a daily affirmation. And then at the end of the day, you fill in the 3 amazing things happened today, and how could I have made today even better? So that's the journal that I use. Thousands of these types of journals are available. You don't need to buy a book off Amazon. You can go and start tomorrow with a pen and paper of yourself. Just write down things that you're grateful for, because I think the fundamental thing about journaling is gratitude.
Oh, I've just done that. Look, just bought a notebook. Yeah.
Yeah, Jake said she's literally bought a note. Fantastic. Yeah. There's bullet journals. There's all sorts of journals out there. The point is to slow down and smell the roses, and to actually appreciate what you're achieving, because it's easy for us to get knocked off course. So I've been doing this for many, many years now. I've got habits that include meditation and reading books every day and things like that. But it's all about just setting yourself up for success that day. And then whatever the day throws at you, before I go to bed, and whatever the day's been like, whatever state I'm in when I go to bed. You and I were out partying a few weeks ago, weren't we, mate, before all of this happened?
Here it is. I look at them photographs the other day. I was like, I was just like so longing for that again. Isn't that mad?
But that night when I got home, I had a couple of shandies, so my handwriting probably wasn't as formal as it normally would be. But I wrote down in the journal what a great day we'd had going out and spending with friends and things. So if I'm tired, tough, I write in the journal anyway. If I'm low, tough, I write in the journal anyway. I just write in the journal. And so this reminds me of all the good stuff that helps during the day. And what it really helps with as well going forward is, if you're having one of those bad days, if you've been knocked off course, go and grab the journal. And it will take you less than 10 seconds to find something that you're really grateful for that can get you back on track.
Yeah.
It could be something that's happened that day. It could be something that you've written in the journal that you're grateful for that morning. One of the habits that I've got into is I'm a big fan. I'm a productivity geek as well, Ian, as you know. I'm a big fan of a methodology called GTD, getting things done. So I'm a driven guy, but part of GTD is you do a weekly review of where you've been and where you're heading next. And part of that review is looking through my journal. Because it's interesting, even a week gone from winning the biggest client that you might ever win, or doing a fantastic presentation on stage, or whatever the success looks like in your world, you can have forgotten that, and it can be, woe is me, and things are not going so well. So doing that weekly review reminds you of what you've achieved that week. And if I can, Ian, I'll share some of the other stuff that I do as well to sort of review that, because journaling is the first part of it, and then reviewing the journal is the big part after. So go ahead, Ian.
Just let me jump into one thing you said before, affirmations. It's a bit Marmite affirmations, isn't it? People can kind of feel a little bit like it's a bit woo-woo. A bit tree. Yeah. I'm hugging way too many trees lately, Richard. I'll tell you what it is. But anyway, so tell me a little bit about affirmations. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, you and me both. Let's address that actually. I am the least woo-woo person that you can find. I work in the tech industry. I am deeply skeptical of all of the woo-woo things that people might mention. But journaling is something that I've interviewed over it's coming up to 75 of the top people in the IT industry, wildly successful people, and I don't just mean financially. I mean successful in life, health, everything else, family, love, all the rest of it. And almost without fail, all of them have got a practice of journaling. They've pretty much all got a practice of meditation as well. So if you think it's woo-woo or don't think it's woo-woo, I've always had a method in my life of seeing people who are successful, seeing people who I admire, and picking up their best traits and sort of copying them and running with them a little bit. So for me, whether you believe it's woo-woo or not, this sort of stuff works. And affirmations, it can be just as simple as saying, I'm going to have a good day, or I am. I do this before I go on stage. You and I are both public speakers. I get terribly nervous before I go and do that. And I know you've got Dr. Simon Raybould coming up later today, who is a rock star at this stuff, and helps people become brilliant at it. So, but one of the things that I do on the day that I'm speaking is write that I'm well liked, I'm well respected, and I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Just to prime myself for when I'm going on stage, because all of us think anybody who does public speaking is like, this is the day I'm going to get caught out, and somebody in the audience going to go, you don't know what you're talking about. So affirmations remind me, I know this stuff and I can do it.
It's a really interesting thing you say, and I will digress a little bit, but often you see speakers on stage and you think, wow, they are successful, they are very confident, and they must be so relaxed on stage, and it's not true. I think everybody gets a little bit nervous, and we've got Jeff Ram coming up later, and Jeff speaks all over the world, and I'm sure you would agree that there is an element of nerves before you step up on there, and I think you wouldn't be human unless you had that nerve. So I guess it's a little bit about how you use that nerves. For me, it's very much like crossing the white line playing football. You're sitting on the subs bench, dying to get on. I'm actually dying to get on that stage, but there's an element of nerves when you're there, and it's just using that correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. So affirmations is a part of that. I know other professional speakers I speak to they have music, so they've got the headphones on before they go on stage. That's another form of affirmation, isn't it? That's sort of saying, geeing yourself up and getting ready to go for it. So whether you think it's woo-woo or don't, this stuff works, and this is what top performers do. So there's some lovely comments I can see coming in. Mayra saying she wholeheartedly believes this needs to be part of the education system and prepare them for life lessons and tweak it depending on the student. Absolutely, because how many of our young people nowadays do we see who are absolute rock stars and are going to go on to do incredible things, and yet they're getting ground down by the day-to-day because they need those affirmations. They need to be told. They need to remind themselves every day of the cool stuff that they're doing. I do believe I agree with you there, Mayra. Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say I totally agree.
I can ramble about this topic.
No, it's great, and I think something you just touched upon there about younger people. I think I was going to say us as older people. I hope you don't mind lumping you into my age group there, but I really do think that it's part of our. We should be giving them a platform where we should be letting them know how much of a rock star they actually are. And we've got Ashley King coming up later on, and Ash is great. A young lady, and I look at Ash and I think, yes, these are the type of people that we need to be pushing forward, because they are doing so well. But I guess they look at people like us and think, those are successful guys. They're all confident. They've got it. We're just we're normal. We're same as them.
I have sleepless nights. I have, somebody said to me the other day, let's touch on this subject of social media, and now more than ever, we're all stuck in our houses. We're all looking at social media. We're all looking at what other people are doing and going, oh, haven't they got a better life than us?
Yeah.
It's simply not true. There's a pastor, Stephen Furtick, who, with this wonderful quote, he said, social media is where people display their highlight reels, and we compare our backstage to other people's highlight reels.
Yeah.
So, we only put the best version of ourselves on social media. Journaling is another way of you reminding yourself of what's good in your world and what you're winning at, instead of comparing yourself to people around you. And so one of the things that I do with journaling, writing it every day is important, super important, whether you're sober, drunk, tired, awake, feeling good, not feeling good. Just write it down, because, you know, it'll remind you of what's going on well in your world. But the big part of it, the important part of it, is reviewing it. So I review it obviously every night before I get to bed. I do a weekly review that I mentioned, but I also do something called my monthly nourishers. And this is just a sheet of paper where I go through my journal and I sit, you know, one Sunday early in the following month, and I look at the month that's just gone, and I say, what are 30 things that were highlights of my month? And you know what? There's never just 30 things. There's, you know, I hand it to my wife afterwards, and I share it with Claire, and, you know, say, hey, here's a reminder. And she was like, you know, we have a good life. And it's not about boasting. It's about reminding yourself of all the cool stuff that happens. Yeah. I'm fortunate enough before all this hit to do a lot of travel and to go to some wonderful places. But, you know, there's some brilliant people I get to spend time with over video calls, in person, all sorts. These are all highlights. I write them down. And so my monthly nourishers, I go through and remind myself of all the cool stuff that's happened in the last 30 days. And you know what? We've got such short memories. I've got the memory span of a goldfish, Dave. You know, I can forget that. But 30 days on, you forget something awesome that happens the previous month. And, you know, so that monthly nourisher process is really important for me. I've got a prop, actually. I want to share something, and this is something I can't take credit for. I was listening to you talking to Polly Brennan earlier on. How awesome is Polly?
She's, you know, amazing. Everyone loves her.
She's incredible.
Everyone needs a Polly. She's fantastic.
Polly was one of the first people, you know, I'm for people who are asking on Twitter, my accent is not from the Northeast, as you've probably gathered. I'm a Brummie. I'm from Birmingham. And I moved up here 3 years ago when I got married. Polly was one of the first people in the Northeast who I became friends with. And she's had such a profound influence on my life because she's such a positive person. But I just want to share this prop that she introduced to me.
I'm nervous. Where's this going? What are you going to pull out? If I know our Polly, it could be anything.
So this is my jar of awesome. Now, this is a jar. My stepchildren, Ben and Ryan, made this for me, which is very cool. But this is a jar where every time something really cool happens, and I'm really fortunate, I get sent lovely gifts by people and thank you cards and stuff like that, which all go in my journal. I'm very grateful for them, but I also put them on a Post-it note or pop them in here. And it just means anytime that I'm feeling down, I can take the lid off and pull these things out and just have a little read, and it'll tell me. Let's pull one out at random. Let's see if this one.
Oh, this is brilliant.
Yeah.
So children, animals, and adventure.
Yeah, so I'll just share that. But it was sold a sponsored podcast. So I make money off doing podcasts. So there's a win there. There's some other stuff here. Let's have a look. There's a really sweet card from Robin Kennedy. Response Suite just sent me, a lovely thank you note for a piece of work that we did together. Anyway, you get the idea. There's cool stuff in there. It's not just business related. There's all sorts in there. Business wins. I'm just going through them now, and it's making me smile, actually, mate.
I can see.
It's just reminded me.
So I was going to say, for listeners and viewers at home, I think there's also something else that I do, something similar. And if someone says something nice on social media or Facebook, Twitter, whatever, I'll kind of snip that. I'll screenshot it and save that and put it in a folder as well. And sometimes I can look in this folder and just see all the nice things that people say. So it's not just the physical jar, which is lovely, but you can also do that online.
Exactly the same. This is another form of journaling. So, the guys that I work with, the team that I work with, Jenks, Mark, others are on the call with us at the moment, part of Team Tubb. We have a Slack. We use Slack, as many of us do, for internal communications. So we have a wins channel within Slack. Cool. And exactly as you say, if we get a compliment, if we get positive feedback from a client, any of these type of things, we take a screenshot and we post it to the Wins channel. Brilliant. It's another form of journaling, and it's another form of reminding yourself, you've got this, you are doing great things. So that then the next time you get the snarky comment on Twitter, or you get the idiot leaving you a nasty comment on your YouTube video,
never get any
or whatever. But you can delete it, ignore those people, then go to your wins, go to your jar of awesome, go to your journal, whatever it might be, and remind yourself of not just the awesome stuff that you've done today, but last week, last month, last year, because all of us who are in business are doing awesome stuff every single day. I've just been reminded of a really cool one. So this is an Amazon, the little slips when you get sent a gift on Amazon.
Yeah.
And this is from my friend Daniel, who sent me a bottle of Moet champagne, which I believe is still in the house at the moment. So that's a win, because I'm going to go back and consume that later today. I forgot about that. Thank you, Daniel.
Nice one, Daniel. Yeah. I had something to say, then I've totally lost it. Oh yes, you know what I was going to say. When you're journaling, you said 3 things you are going to achieve today. Anybody watching, why don't we ask for viewers, listeners, to try to give 3 compliments today somewhere across the day?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that'd be great, and share these as well. So I'm a big fan in every day. Who can you thank today?
Yeah, I love that.
Who is cool? So, it could be as simple, and all of us should be thanking you, Ian, for putting this together, and we're having so much fun with it. So if you're watching this, tweet Ian, leave a Facebook comment, send him a message afterwards saying thank you to the guy, because he does so much, not just for the Northeast, but for the wider business community as well. But how many people like Ian are in your life at the moment who you regularly consume brilliant content from, who you follow on Twitter, who have done you a good turn? Have a think about this and say thank you to them. This is the other thing I find about the gratitude journal, because I'm telling you now, when you start doing this every single day, you're like, what am I grateful for? I'm grateful for the roof above my head. I'm grateful for the food on my table. Now, these are all things we should be grateful for, but once you start doing it each and every day, you have to dig a little bit deeper, because you can't just keep writing, I'm grateful for a roof above my head. That sort of grows tired fairly quickly. And one thing I found to flip that over is to go, who am I grateful to? What am I grateful for in that respect? And so after about 30 days of doing this journaling and the gratitude, every single day I was reminded, you know what, I must pick up the phone and say hello to Ian and say thank you for the brilliant podcasts he puts out. I must say thank you to Mark for the fantastic videos that he produces. And I'll tell you some brilliant stories about this. You can see this library of books behind me. Makes me look intellectual when I'm doing calls. You and I both know that's not the case. But there's some incredible authors up there who have been virtual mentors to me from afar. I started reaching out to these people and saying, you don't know me, but thanks very much, because you just had a massive impact on my life. And you'd be surprised, these people don't get, we think that New York Times bestselling authors and captains of industry and business leaders and things, they haven't got the time to speak to the little people. Nothing could be further from the truth. I've sent messages to people saying, hey, thanks. And I've had such lovely responses come through. And in the last sort of 18 months of doing that, I have met and sat down and had dinner with some of my absolute superheroes in business as a result of just dropping them an email to say, thanks very much for everything that you do. So
I think that's a great tip, and I encourage people on the podcast to do that, because it's interesting. You and I create content. You don't know who listens on the other side of that podcast. And I just mentioned earlier on, in over 100 countries, I've got no idea who's listening in Costa Rica. So tell me. And it's a bit like being an author. You write a book, you put it out in the ether, but I've got no idea who's reading it. So as Richard says there, if you've got a great book that you love, probably look on Twitter. You can probably find them on Twitter. Even just send them a little message, and you're right. You think people are going to be receiving so many messages, but they don't. Because people don't really take the time.
I've got to tell the one story. I think I've shared it with you, but I'll share it with the people at home, Ian, as well. So I mentioned GTD, Getting Things Done, which is a book that has sold a cajillion copies. It's written by a guy called David Allen, and it is a worldwide phenomenon. So if you're into productivity stuff, then you're going to know what GTD is. If you're not and you're in business, go and check it out. Anyway, I read this book. Oh, when was it? I forget when it came out, 2001, maybe. And it had a profound, life-changing effect on me. Anyway, I never, ever reached out to the author, David Allen, and said thank you. And then this time, it was around this time last year, I was sat there one Saturday morning, I was doing my journal, and it suddenly popped into my head. I was like, never said thank you to this guy. So I went onto his website, gtd.com, and used the contact form and said, hey, Mr. Allen, just wanted to say thank you. I'm not asking for anything. Literally just wanted to say thanks. You know, I built a business and sold it off the back of your advice. Really, really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. Monday morning, I had an email back from David Allen himself and said, Richard, thanks. You've made my day with that comment. Really appreciate it. Hope life is good for you across there in Newcastle upon Tyne. So we'd clearly gone and checked out, you know.
Yeah.
He said, a lot of people don't know this because he's an American author. He says, but my wife and I live in Amsterdam. If you're ever here, let me know and I'll take you out for dinner. This is a guy who sold 3 million copies of the book, you know, is seen as a productivity god. It gets better because my wife and I were going to Amsterdam that Wednesday for a speaking gig that I was headed to. So I replied back to him and said, that's really kind. I'm actually going to be in Amsterdam on Wednesday. And he replied back and said, I insist you come out for dinner. That Wednesday, my wife Claire and I were sat there with one of my all-time heroes, having dinner with him and his wife in his local restaurant. And all of that, you know, based on a thank you message. So don't do these things because you're expecting great stuff to happen, but don't be surprised if great stuff happens as a result of that gratitude.
Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that story. That is fantastic. Well done. Well done. That's great. Suki has just asked, there we go. Does your jar go larger or do you achieve it?
Well, it's a fairly large jar already, Suki, but the stuff, I'm going to empty it afterwards and see when that was from, but I think that's about 3 years worth in there.
Oh, wow, really?
I'm thinking I'm going to get a new jar. I'm going to get a new jar, but I just keep ramming them in, and so perhaps one day the jar will explode. But at the moment, the jar's good. So
I really want people to take that on board, though, Richard, in terms of reaching out and letting people know what that content's meant for them. I have done that with one chap whose life was really turned around by a snooker player's autobiography. And he told me the tale, like exactly what you just said then. I said at the end of it, I said, great story. Does the guy know how he changed your life? And he looked blankly and said, well, no, of course he doesn't. Well, when we leave here, go on Twitter, find out, or look on Google him, whatever, and email him. And he did, you know, and I love that. Yeah, definitely.
You can systemize this as well.
Okay.
So I'm a productivity nerd that we talked about. So I've got this stuff that I do every day. If you are one of those people who, when you're out walking, you go, oh, I should call that person and say thank you. But you never get round to it because then when you get back, all the world collapses on you and it's like, oh, you know, never remember to do these things. You can systemize it. So in your calendar, why not set a day once a week, once a month, whatever you're comfortable with, that reminds you to say thank you to somebody, to leave a positive podcast review, leave a book review, something along those lines where you can give gratitude to the people who are helping you, who would never, ever know about it. And so I do that in my, I use a tool called Todoist, and once a week it pops up and says, leave a podcast review, leave a book review, or say thank you to somebody. And so I just go off and do it. And I tell you what, mate, it makes the world of difference to people. So if I'm leaving a business review, this takes me about 2 minutes. I will write what is awesome about the business, and many of them in the Northeast. So it's a great way to support local Northeast businesses. I paste that onto their Facebook page and say, hey, thank you. I then grab it and find their Google location on Google, and I paste it in there. And then I go across to LinkedIn and I paste it into their LinkedIn reviews. So whichever platform they favor, they're getting 3 reviews there across the board. And but it makes a massive difference to people because it comes out of the blue, and it's just nice to get something like that. So yeah, another benefit of journaling.
Yeah, it's good karma, Richard. And I tell people when I'm coaching on social media to do this on LinkedIn, because people put some fantastic content on LinkedIn, but don't often receive comments that warrant. And what I say to people is, you know, you're putting content on LinkedIn and expecting people to comment on your stuff, but you're not commenting on anyone else's. So what you've got to do is trying to leave 10 meaningful comments a day. So 3 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, 4 in the evening. Just gamify it, and that might be 5 comments, whatever you've got time to do. But and it's not nice one, mate, or good stuff or cheers. It's tell them why that content resonated with you, or maybe what your experience is. And it's just good karma, because then they'll go, who's that Richard guy who was always commenting on my posts? I'm going to comment on his. So you're right. It's don't give to receive, but give, and you never know what could happen. Just like the Amsterdam tale.
Yeah, absolutely. If I know we got a few seconds left. I just want to give a shout out that had a profound impact on me, actually. Another book. If any of your listeners have not read The Go-Giver by Bob Berg and John David Mann, seek out that book, because it's just a wonderful book. It's a parable, so it'll take you less than a couple of hours with a good cup of tea to read. But it talks about how your business can be improved by putting other people first and saying thank you, showing gratitude, helping other people. And more than ever in the current climate, that's what we need to do. We need to be thinking about the people around us and getting out of our own heads and saying, how can I help other people? And I think for me, journaling is just one of those ways of getting out my own head and thinking about what's going on good and how I can help the people around me as well.
That's a great message to leave it on, Richard. And thanks so much. And listen, thanks so much for the influence you've had on me in the short time that we've known each other this couple of years, because I know you've been dead supportive of what I do. And you're such a great guy that we've got now in the Northeast. You're one of us now. You're not going back down to Blackburn for your hours, and you're staying here, okay?
I can live with that. Thank you, mate.